Welcome back, part 2, with even more thrills, a sharper storyline, and no legacy tools are safe. What am I going to do, throw my tools away? We just watched a Scream movie. Anyway, this is where my flip carts are going to live for the foreseeable future. And if you have not seen the first flip cart video, please go back and watch that one. There's a sing-along included. It's media gold right there. For all those that have seen it, let's stop wasting time. Come on, let's go. Now to cut the tops. I first measure in 6 inches from each side and find the center of the board. Then I position my combination square and draw a 45-degree line on each of the top corners so that they matched. Using that marvelous countersink bit, I drill for the 2 screws and secure the 2 boards together. Cut off the miters, and remember, if you draw both miters on the same side, you'll end up drawing 3 lines. I chose to use a 1.5-inch poplar dowel, so I'm going to use a 1.5-inch hole saw to drill out the center of the hole. Because a 1.5-inch Forstner bit is like $50 at the store, I just priced them online and they are a lot cheaper there. In the endless aisle. I have gone ahead and completed this cart for 2 reasons. One, because I wanted to actually show you guys how to do it without me kind of fumbling through the entire time like this entire video has been. And 2, because I needed to start playing around with this actual joint. And this joint here, it was only going to be the 1.5 inch depth. I went ahead and took it down to closer to 3 inches because I wanted to lower my actual shelving on the inside. So the part that flips around, I needed that to be lower. And I needed it to be lower because as I put him next to my workbench, I'm looking at it and thinking, oh poop, my flip carts are going to be like 6 inches taller than my actual workbench is going to be. So I don't want to jack up my workbench that much. And as you can see, the bandsaw is going to have the highest table of all of the flip tools that are going in here. For this joint, mark the tongues needed for the router bit on the board. With my tongue lines marked, what now I'm going to do is actually set my depth. So this square I do not change, it's 2 3/4 of an inch. That is going to be the depth that I'm actually cutting these out to start with. So you just line him up. Give him a quick doodle on here. And then that's going to transfer around to the sides. Isn't that important? So with this, we lost a board. So once the lines are transferred to here, these are both 3.5 inches wide. So that's just your 2x4 width. So that's going to get, because it's got rounded edges, I am using a more square piece of stock. And he just goes into this corner and draws my lines. So now I know this is all remove. This is all remove. So we're going to be removing all of this material. Overkill? Maybe. Here's where things are going to get a little crazy. I put a board in my vise just so I could put a clamp to hold this in place so it's held on by my workbench. Then I had made this template just from an old piece of pine. I just Craig jigged it together real quick so that I had a straight line for my flush cut bit. So this guy here, so that way my bearing can run along this inside line. I did go ahead and give it 4 sides because when I'm routing out here, the base of my router is no longer in contact with my actual round. So I did want it to be unison. I didn't want this to fall down. So it's got 4 sides. So I just line this up with those 2 lines that I had right here. And then I clamp him down. Just make sure your clamps, you'll see all my little scars. Make sure your clamps are going to be farther away because the base is going to actually hit them. If you guys have like any 1x6 instead of 1x4, that's the true material to make these templates out of because then it doesn't interfere with your router base. All right, with that secured down, getting foggy. With that secured down, I am running 2 routers because I don't want to reset my depth. So the first depth I'm going to do is just a little shallow guy, so about a 1/2 inch. And then once the 1/2 inch is done, then I move into the little bit deeper because this is going to be my actual true depth that I need the machine to be at. All right, that's literally all there is to it. Loosen off your clamps. There she is. You do have just this little spot. If I'd actually made my template just a smidge bigger, it would take off this little bit of a snipey spot. That's all right. And that's it. And then we go ahead and move on to the next side. So I do this side here. Again, just throw it in. You're going to go ahead and clamp it down. And then, again, I use these 2 bigger pieces for my clamps. Line those up with your lines that you've drawn. Router. So you're going to get this measurement from the half lap joint on your legs. And then I just pair it up to this fence. So I have the fence to draw on. Make sure these 2 lines are pretty parallel. Give it a quick score. Flip them around. Again, make sure that's kind of parallel. Mark them. And then this little guy we are going to get rid of on the bandsaw. You only need to mark one side. Add some glue to the joint. I wish when I tell Subway that I like a lot of mayo on my sandwich, that they would squeeze the mayo out with the same passion that I squeeze this glue container. All right, just got to kiss these with the sander just to get these nicely rounded over. Make sure these edges are all flat with each other just to make it a little more professional. And we will today finish the flip cards. That's exciting. The 1.5-inch dowel rods, we are not going to measure our tops. We are actually going to measure the bottom. So your dowel rod will be the size from here to there. That way when you transfer that measurement to the top, it is as square as possible. If you measured the tops and they were too close together or too far apart or a rhombus or something, they would not match up. It would not be square. And we want the flippy part to actually navigate and work, especially if you have something big. So that way it's squared and not sideways. You get it. Cut the dowel rod down to the measurement in the corner. Find that scrap piece of plywood. This might not be the same piece because look at how wavy that cut is. What even happened? The longest measurement needed is 23 inches for the flippy part of the flip cart. Rip down 4 pieces or 8 if you are making 2 carts to 2 3/4. Half of your pieces will have 1.5 inches trimmed off due to your plywood's thickness. I did go with a 2 3/4 inch thick piece for this. You could go all the way down to a 2-inch just so it has a little bit of bite on the top and bottom for that dowel rod for inside of here. I went with 2 3/4 because I do plan to put a drawer on the inside of this. Now, that's a lot of real estate just to lose in, the flippy of the cart. And I think it'd be really cool, to put Forstner bits or the bandsaw blades, just accessories for the tool that's on that flip cart at the time in the drawer. And I will show you a cool trick so that you can actually open the drawer, whether it's on the top or bottom, in case you're just trying to grab out a Forstner bit just to throw it into your regular drill. I did plan for the grain direction of the plywood to go the same direction as the plywood slats that are on the bottom. And then lastly, I cut the interiors down the 1.5 inches because I didn't want to see this butted edge on the face. So I'd like it to be flush to there. And then again, that drawer is going to just be able to pull out. So we got that. Because I am not going to be attaching the faces of these sides because I do want to put the drawer insert into here, what I'm actually going to be doing is using screws to screw this actual interior side in so that it is as sound as possible, because again, that's where all the weight is being carried. I have 2.5-inch screws. I wish I had 2-inch. The 2-inch would be full threaded all the way to the top. That would be perfect. I've got a million of these 2.5. There's actually an entire another bucket. So I'm trying to just use them up. So I am going to use these screws. However, they would hit each other if I put them in the exact same spots. So what I have done, I just took a piece of scrap, drew a line so that I knew how far in I needed to mark this. So if I went farther than that, I obviously wouldn't be hitting my board. And then I went ahead and just put 2-inch and 8-inch from each side for this, and then it'll be 2 and 8 for the top. When I flip it over, it'll probably just be like 2.5, 8.5. That way the screws won't hit each other. They'll be staggered, and that'll add support to it, and you won't really tell because it's either flipped one way or the other. So for that, I do have a countersink, so that way I can drill in. It'll be a nice clean insert for the hole. This side is flush, so you're just going to go ahead and knock that board in. Does not matter about the bottom. We'll be setting it in just a moment. All right, I had no screw gun, so we'll do all this again. I'm just using just a regular drill bit now just to pilot these down. And then the screw will go in. So this is flush and beautiful. You want to make sure that you are piloting these down because you don't want the wood to split out. If the wood splits out, you just lost the whole entire reason for putting in a screw. Repeat for this other side. The tops are looking beautiful. Just a light sanding to get that line taken off. The sides are perfectly flush, and you can kind of see that they did kind of go like this into the bottom. That is okay because this board isn't attached, and when I go to set it, I can go ahead, come in here, give it a little light pressure out to get the bottom set. I am going to do the bottoms when I put them on the cart because it's going to be a pain to get the dowel rod through here. If I go ahead and screw this on, because I'm going to have to guess to try to get it through, and if everything's not perfectly straight, which I doubt it is, it's going to be a pain. So this is done. Repeat it again for the other cart if you're building one. So again, measuring from the bottom because the tops could be at askew. Right now I've got, I'd say close to a 1/2 inch gap between, which would be fine. You could put them on here to spin, but I don't want them to catch on anything or do anything like that. So we are actually going to make these little washer spacers to go on either side of them. And one should do it out of just a cheapy piece of plywood, and then they just go into here. So let me show you how to make these. They are super simple, all right, as long as you own a hole saw. So it is super easy to make these little plywood rings. All you have to do is just take your hole saw, use that 1.5 inch, and I have a 2.5 on here, just so it has some space. Don't use the next size up because it'll just tear it out. You are going to need a bigger one for him. There usually is that little washer on the back that just makes these easier to unlock when you are done. That's all right, we'll get her figured out. I have piloted my holes because I already started to drill here, and it kind of gets messy if you don't. So I am lining up the holes like that. Putting her down. Cut out your spot. And find your screwdriver. And there's a little ring. So we need 4 of those. Guys, how exciting is this moment? Like, for real. This has been months and months and months. So I'm going to go ahead and put my dowel rod in the side, pop in one of those spacers, pop in the shelf. Put her through the other side. Put this spacer in to place. Then continue driving it home. Beauty. Okay, so this side is flat. Like I said, that's freaking sweet. They are probably going to give or take a little spacing out of there. So what we are going to do, since he is right there, will this screw get? Oh yeah, it does. I am going to just drive a 2.5-inch screw up through the bottom. Oh, there is a knot right there too. How many times can I drop this? Okay. So make sure this is flush with the side. Drive a screw into him just so he can't vibrate out or come out later on. Get a clamp. One of these clamps actually cut me open today. It had like a piece of shrapnel metal on it. So then on this side, same thing. We are just getting him into position. Not sure why that moved him back in more. So that he is flush. He will always be flush. And I will drive a screw into the bottom of this one. Figure out how to get around. Perfect. You guys could clamp and glue these into place. My thought is that if something happens to the flip cart and I need to take it out later on, I would like it to be able to come out easy. So I just take the screws out, you punch these out, boom. Or if you utilize them for something else down the road, but so there is one little baby flippy. Confused about the wheels. It's not a terrible height. Not terrible. It's to the top of here. About 4 inches extra. Nothing too bad. So we are going to just connect the top, put it into place, and we're pretty much done. So evolution of the locking system. At first I was going to use a barrel bolt just to put it on the side, but that would require one for both sides because to unlock this and pull your drawer out, now you'd have to have one on the back side, which means I would always be staring at one of these, or I could mount it onto the top. But having this board centered and the thickness that I had chosen, there is not enough for it to bite into on the top, and there's not enough to bite into on the bottom. I only have maybe a 1/2 inch total on either side when this is level. So this is out. Also, yeah, I don't want to look at one of these all the time, which would be 2 of these all the time. No. Then I went to a hitch pin. So what I was going to initially do was just go ahead and drill out with my hole saw and then drill a smaller hole that's this size all the way into this board. And then this would sit in there, hold itself, and voila. But I don't know, they just seemed kind of cheapy, and I didn't like that as much. Then I was walking by, and there was the screwdriver. You know where I'm going with this. So same system, go ahead, drill out the hole saw, drill out a spot, drill my smaller hole, and then this would actually basically marry to this board, go all the way in, and then I would just chop off the extra because you're going to have the drawer inside of there. So with this, you'd only need 1 per cart. I'm going to experiment with 1 per cart. If I have to do another one on the opposite side or the same side, we could do that. But you really only need the 1. It's recessed on the side. You're not really going to be seeing it. It's going to be easy to grab because I'm going to drill that hole bigger. This is the winner. That's the one we're choosing right there. Guys, the easiest way to remove these off of this piece, I don't know what they're called, is to just loosen this up. You would end up getting this guy out of here. Just don't cut yourself. So remove your pin. And then if you only had one of them, you would just stab it through. But I have 2. So stab your screwdriver through here. Take a wrench. Put them on there like that. And then you're just going to press down. Actually, you're going to press up. And it will unlock. And it will unlock them. So bam. Bam. I'm actually keeping this one. But I want to reinstall that little washer onto here. So that way it makes them easy to unlock, you know. On my flip carts, the caster wheels that are the swiveling ones, that is going to be what I will consider the front of my cart. So I am going to go ahead and measure the 2 3/4 inches down. And then I just set it out to have it as a 6-inch. So 6 inches in, and that's going to get me past my 2 1/2 inch, the farthest screw that we had put in. So that's going to get me past that point. So that's going to be perfect. So 2 3/4, 6 inches in. Why is he using that electrician square still? I like it. I'm going to go ahead and pilot a smaller hole. My arbor for my hole saw, it's getting a little dull, so it likes to kind of wander before it starts driving in. Then we are going to jump to the 2 1/2 inch hole saw, and I am only going to cut out 1 of these boards. So I'm only cutting to this depth. This board I got to leave so that it has a little bit of grip. Once I get so far down, I'm actually going to remove my arbor so that it doesn't begin piloting that big of a hole into the next piece, because I want that to be only the size of that scratch owl with an A. Yeah. That's perfect. Just the arbor just fell out. So, boom. And then I'm going to go ahead, continue on until it drills out the entire spot. You know what else is conveniently 6 inches in? The screw on the other side. So with that screw removed, I just eyeballed where the dead center for this one was at, just because you don't want the screwdriver, to be closer to one side or the other. It doesn't really matter if it's millimeters off. So I just eyeballed it to where I thought was center. And then I am using a drill bit that is the same size as my scratching owl. So I go ahead and just drill this out while this is angled, so I'm not actually hitting this at all. Then I go ahead and move this in, make sure that it is level with my tops, and then drill out this hole. And now this should be pretty close to fitting in there. I want it to be snug, because again, I don't want my tool stuff to be moving around. She's secure, bud. And there is the finished product. I wish I would have cut this out on the drill press while I was cutting out the other holes, just to make sure that it was perfectly at 90 degrees, but eyeballing it did not turn out too bad either. And with these, you do also need to drill a hole on this side for the top. So go ahead, get it level again. Perfect. That way, whichever direction it is flipped, you now have it locked into place. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! It's mounted sideways because it's too big. Hallelujah! I didn't take into account this handle sticking out 6 inches. So online, it said that the width was 22 inches wide. Liars! By adding drawers to the sides, I can only utilize the top 3/4 inch piece of birch to mount my tools onto. Now, this guy weighs 92 pounds by himself. And that's a lot of weight to be hanging like a bat underneath, because I'm not going to use this nearly as much as the sanders that are going to be on the top. So I am going to utilize both screw spots in the bottom, so that way I can mount it into this plywood. And I went ahead and I bought a whole bunch of different sized pan screws because I didn't want to have to keep guessing, and because the depths are going to be different heights for the bottom for the screw to go in, and it cannot go into where my drawer is going to be. Other than that, you're just going to figure out where you want the tools to go onto the carts, as mentioned earlier, and then screw them into place. So again, utilizing that 3/4 birch if you're going to plan to put the drawers in. Otherwise, you can just buy any length of lag and screw it straight in there. It's not going to do anything for the flippy part of the cart. Part 1, the bottoms. Part 2, the tops. Part 3 is going to be creating the sandpaper organizer and a way to organize all of the cords on these flip carts. Seriously, part 1 can be rewatched right here. You are in part 2, congratulations. And part 3 will be right here once I make all of the stuff, smash a video together, and post it. So thank you guys all for watching these flip carts. I hope they turned out as good as mine did. And hopefully you didn't roll an ankle by driving these around like a scooter in your garage. So I'll see you in the next video.